Out of all of the horrifying and disturbing things in the grimdark universe of Warhammer 40k, none conjure such visceral feelings of hatred and disgust quite like the Daemonculaba. For most of us within the community, this thing exists as something of an urban legend that we only found out about when a buddy of ours sent us a particularly foreboding Warhammer wiki link. Without question, the Daemonculaba is the thing that anyone who's ever gone down a late-night Warhammer lore rabbit hole will point to as the single most disgusting thing that exists in the entirety of 40k's lore. And for good reason. On paper, it's pretty revolting, a creation so horrifically disturbing that it goes far beyond what most would consider to be grimdark fantasy. But is it really that bad? Is the Daemonculaba, and more specifically the novel that it comes from, Dead Sky Black Sun, really the worst thing that exists in all of Warhammer 40k? Or is its reputation kinda sorta unearned? What exactly is a Daemonculaba? What is its purpose and why are they made? And why on earth would anyone choose to read the book that this terrible nasty thing comes from? And heads up, I'm putting a bit of a content disclaimer here, because we are going to be talking about the literal worst thing in a franchise that is known for having some pretty terrible, awful, grimdark stuff. So just know that going in. So if you're not interested in hearing all of the gory details, just go ahead and skip to the timestamp on screen, where I'm going to try to do the impossible and actually try to defend this horrible, nasty book. Anyways, a quick shout out to this video's sponsor, and then we're going to dive headfirst into the grimdark.
In 2023, we're all trying to live better, more fulfilling, and healthy lives, and I'm no exception to that. I'm a little ashamed to admit it, but after I started doing YouTube full-time, I kinda started slacking off in the health and wellness department. So I finally decided to change that, and the sponsor of this video, AG1 by Athletic Greens, has helped me see a massive improvement in my focus, energy levels, and overall well-being. Not only does this stuff taste great, but it's the first thing that I reach for every morning when I get to the studio, or in the case of this footage, right after a workout. If you're not familiar with it, AG1 by Athletic Greens is a nutritional supplement that helps with immune support, energy recovery, and focus. It combines 9 different health products into a single, easy-to-drink powder that all work together as one, replacing a multivitamin, multimineral, pre- and probiotic, immune support, and much more. This means that it does more for your body while saving you time, money, and confusion when looking at the thousands of different products available on the market today. The AG1 powder is perfect for fulfilling your nutritional needs, as each serving contains 75 different ingredients with components including vitamins, minerals, probiotics, and adaptogens. And most importantly, AG1 is certified by NSF, so you can trust that what's on the label is exactly what you're getting. If you want to try it out for yourself, then click on the link in the description of this video to get a 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D3K2 and 5 travel packs free with your first purchase. Big thanks to AG1 for sponsoring this video. The longer you're a part of the Warhammer 40k community, the better your chances are of somebody sending you that dreaded link to the Daemonculaba's wiki page. And maybe you're one of the lucky ones that had enough common sense not to click on this suspicious link. Or perhaps you're like me and you had a perfectly good Friday afternoon completely ruined for you. Or maybe perhaps you have no idea what this thing is, you don't know anything about it, and you clicked on this video hoping to learn something new about your favorite grimdark universe. And I myself am about to be the one that completely ruins your day. This video is going to be split into 2 parts. In the first half, I'm going to tell you all of the grisly details about the Daemonculaba, what it is, how it was made, what its ultimate purpose was, and what happened to them. And in the second half, I'm going to give you my thoughts on the novel that this terrible abomination comes from, as I think it's kind of earned an unfair reputation, and after having finished it, I gotta admit I actually kind of really enjoyed it. So skip to the timestamp on the screen here if you don't want all of the gruesome details and you just want to hear my thoughts on Dead Sky Black Sun. Okay, final warning, this is your last chance to skip away, as we're just gonna dive right into this thing, fist swinging and balls to the wall. 3, 2, 1. The Daemonculaba were a twisted nightmare construct created by the both at the time newly appointed warsmith Hanzo of the Iron Warriors and his twisted, surgery-obsessed servants from the Dark Mechanicum known as the Savage Morticians. These demonic constructs were created by taking female human slaves captured by the Iron Warriors, who were then handed over to the Savage Morticians, who drugged them deep into an underground chamber beneath Hanzo's fortress Kalin Gol. Through a combined process of demonic ritual, grotesque surgical procedure, forced feedings, and chemical and nutrient injections, the individual would bloat to monstrous proportions and twist and contort into a glorified demonic womb. It's difficult to tell from reading the story if the individuals that would become the Daemonculaba were actually still alive, their minds trapped forever within their newfound fleshy prison. Perhaps considering that the novel itself refers to these things as straight-up demons, mayhaps mercifully, the sentience that they once possessed may have left them long ago, leaving behind nothing but an undulating demonic flesh sack. When the process of their creation ultimately began is unknown, but by the time we see them in the novel, thousands of them have already been constructed. But for what purpose were they made? Well, quite simply, they were made to construct an army, a new generation of Chaos Space Marines that would make Warsmith Hanzu one of the most powerful warlords in the Eye of Terror. You see, being turned into one of these things was not the only horrifying outcome that could occur if you ended up being taken as a slave by the Iron Warriors. In this particular novel, there were two other things that could happen. Now, if the slave was young enough, they may be taken to the pits beneath the fortress to be elevated into a brand new Space Marine. For this to happen though, they would have to be given to the Daemonculaba, pressed inside its meaty, disgusting embrace before literally being stitched inside. Over an extended period of time, the Daemonculaba would begin to worm its way inside of their body, rapidly accelerating their growth to ludicrous levels and generating in them all manner of different organs that make a Space Marine a Space Marine. This would be accomplished by injecting the Daemonculaba with a mixture of uncorrupted gene seed stolen on the world of Hydra Cordatus by Hanzo and the Iron Warriors, mixed with a horrific slurry of ground-up dead Iron Warriors. You see, the Iron Warriors' dead bodies still contained functioning gene seed, so by being fed back into the Daemonculaba and then transfused into the new Space Marine, in a sense they would be able to live on. Now, say what you want about the Iron Warriors being relentlessly evil, but at the end of the day, at least they care about recycling. Now, after the process was complete, the youth would be ejected from its flesh prison as either a brand new Chaos Space Marine or as a hideously deformed mutant giant. The gene seed and hellish sorcery going haywire and causing the growth to accelerate well past what a Space Marine's body was capable of enduring. Now, many of these abominations sported extra limbs, ludicrous levels of layered muscle, distended fanged mouths, and all manner of chaos mutation. Whether they were born a mutant or an Astartes, each and every one of these individuals would be born skinless, a glistening pillar of wet, red muscle. If the newborn was found wanting by the savage morticians, they would be flushed out of the fortress through a putrid drain along with all of the viscera, gore, and surgical byproducts of the savage morticians' experiments. If they managed to survive the whirling blades that viciously churned and chopped everything sent down the sliding, twisting rapids of the pipeline, they would emerge out in the wastes of Medringar as one of the unfleshed, a savage, ravenous horde of rejected Iron Warriors that prowled the wastes, hungry for the flesh of men. If the individual passed the savage mortician scrutiny, they would be clothed in enormous layers of skin harvested by the Iron Warriors and gifted with both a suit of power armor and weapons of chaos, taken from one of their dead predecessors, ready to join the ranks of the Iron Warriors and swear allegiance to Warsmith Hanzo. But Wes, I hear you asking, where did they get all of the skin needed for all of these new Space Marines? And I'm very glad you asked that. I can't believe I wrote that in the script. Okay. But Wes, I hear you asking, where did they get all of the skin needed for all of these new Space Marines? And I'm very glad you asked that, my friend. From the Iron Warriors skinning camps, of course. You see, the slaves that were not turned into the Daemonculabas or into new Iron Warriors were taken to these camps where they were force-fed ludicrous amounts of nutrient-rich gruel, literally having their mouths permanently stitched open and multiple feeding tubes pushed down their throats. When Uriel Ventris and Basanius, who in the novel had come to this world to destroy the Daemonculaba, first encountered these camps, they saw row upon row of enormous cages with enormously bloated individuals, as well as slaves huddled and weeping in the corners that looked as if they had had the fat forcibly sucked out of them, and now looked like they were wearing robes of skin that were dozens of sizes too big for them. I'm sure you know about how horrifying factory farming in the real world really is. It was kind of like that, but with people instead of animals. Uriel Ventris and his best boy Basanius are ultimately successful in destroying these hellish constructs by allying themselves with both the Unfleshed and a group of renegade Space Marines that had been fighting against the Iron Warriors on this world for multiple decades in a series of guerrilla warfare-style attacks that mostly targeted the skinning camps. But Uriel Ventris convinced them to take the fight directly to Hanzu's fortress itself. As of the time of this recording, the Daemonculaba have never been mentioned again within 40k's lore, and although it is potentially possible that they still exist somewhere out on a demon world deep within the Eye of Terror, it's most likely the case that the experiments of the Iron Warriors have simply graduated into a more terrifying and efficient form. Okay, so now that you know all of the grisly details about what the Daemonculaba are and why they're so hated by the community, I kinda wanna try to do the impossible. I kinda wanna defend the book that they come from, because after having read it, I kinda sorta ended up really enjoying it, this one particular nasty chapter aside.
If you were to have asked me a couple of weeks ago what the most disgusting, revolting, and all-around worst book in all of 40k was, I would have pointed to Dead Sky Black Sun because, it had the Daemonculaba. You heard all the grisly details for yourself in the first half of this video. How could anything else even remotely come close? And personally, I knew it was only a matter of time before I was going to have to talk about the Daemonculaba on my channel. I've put it off for a pretty long while, but the Daemonculaba for Warhammer lore tubers is kind of like a rite of passage. Everybody's got to make a video on it at some point. But when I stopped to take the time to actually think about making this video, I realized that what I know about the Daemonculaba was only from the wiki articles and from what other lore tubers had put out in their videos. I hadn't actually read the book that it was based on. And I'll be honest with you, and nowadays I don't really watch other lore tubers' content very often. I don't want their ideas to be in my head when I'm making my video, and then I forget where I heard a certain bit of information and I end up taking one of their ideas. I'd rather just avoid it, so I just don't watch other lore tuber videos. But I made an exception in this case because I kind of wanted to refresh myself on what other people had already said about it, as I definitely watched these videos like many years ago. And to my surprise, in rewatching a lot of the Daemonculaba lore videos, with the exception of Luton, pretty much everyone else who made a video to talk about it hadn't actually read the damn book that it comes from. Which is fine, you don't have to have read an entire book to have an opinion on something that's in it and make a video on it. But I just found that incredibly strange. How bad could Dead Sky Black Sun actually be if the people whose job it is to read the lore and then make content on it explaining the lore refuse to touch this book? It has to be the most revolting thing ever written, right? So what did I do? I took it on myself. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna read this book. I'm willing to sacrifice my sanity and mental health to make the best content possible, to give you guys the most accurate information I can on the nastiest thing in 40k. And here's the thing. When I started reading Dead Sky Black Sun, I was fully anticipating to just be revolted by it and end up having to bail halfway through. But I got to chapter 3, and it suddenly dawned on me. Oh, this is schlock. Oh, this is Warhammer schlock. This is B-movie Sam Raimi territory, absolute 80s level schlock. You can't actually take anything in this book seriously. You can't take it seriously. If you take this book seriously, you're missing the point. It's supposed to be this bombastic, ridiculous, over-the-top, just bloody, gory nightmare, and to a point where it's almost cartoonish. If you know anything about me, you know I'm a big fan of horror, and I especially love campy, over-the-top, schlocky type of horror as well. Me and my friends love to do scary movie night where we get together and watch the nastiest, most revolting movies ever, and we make drinking games out of them. It's a good time. So this kind of book was actually right up my alley, and I ended up really enjoying it. This is the type of book where you have to go into it willing to just completely shut your brain off. Just shut your brain off, leave it at the front door, just jump on board, and just be willing to experience this crazy, over-the-top, bombastic ride into the insanity of the grimdarkness. And if you go in with that mindset, you're gonna have a really good time. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more I'm starting to pick out certain moments in my brain as prime examples of campy horror schlock or just campy action movie nonsense that was absolutely thoroughly enjoyable to read about. For example, there's a human soldier in the book that has absolutely no business standing shoulder to shoulder with Space Marines fighting against Iron Warriors, but damn it, Uriel Ventress loves him. Uriel Ventress wants him on his squad. He may not have gene-enhanced muscles or Emperor-blessed reaction times like the Space Marines do, but you know what this guardsman has? Something far better. He's got integrity. I shit you not, one of the first major things that happens in this book is the Geller fields start to leak on the ship and all hell breaks loose. It's absolute madness. The warp is literally leaking into the ship, there's chaos going on all over the place, and a fucking demon train shows up. The Ormphalis Demonium or something like that. It comes barreling down the blood tracks, constructed with the blood of the innocent, that run between the dark places between universes. And Uriel Ventress and best boy Pausanias get scooped up, thrown on this abomination, and taken for the ride of their lives directly into hell itself. And the main antagonist of this book, Hanzu of the Iron Warriors, first and foremost, fantastic character. But the way he's portrayed in this book is just like a sneering cartoon Saturday morning villain. He's so pulpy and deliciously evil. And honestly, he makes the perfect counter to Uriel Ventress in this book, because Uriel Ventress is all about honor and integrity and fighting for the Emperor, because you know what he is? A space marine. And that's what space marines do. This book was written in 2004, so I think the idea of a space marine was still kind of a novelty. Like if you read like anything in the Horus Heresy, it's played super seriously. Like there's nothing funny about being a space marine. There's nothing ridiculous about being a space marine. It's very, very serious matter. But in this book, it's just like they're not laughing or winking at the audience about like a space marine being kind of a crazy thing, but the book still kind of treats it like that. Like, oh, a space marine, I've heard of those. So you got your Boy Scout ass Ultramarine over here, Uriel Ventress. You got your sneering Skeletor villain Hanzu, and they're perfect. They make a perfect clashing forces. In fact, the best scene in the book, my favorite personal scene, one that actually made me genuinely laugh my ass off, was between Hanzu and Uriel Ventress and all the renegade marines that are fighting alongside Uriel Ventress and trying to take Hanzu's fortress. Hanzu's got them all bound up, their hands are all tied, they're on their knees, and Hanzu's like examining each and every one of them. He's like, yes, sneering ass Hanzu. And he walks up to Uriel Ventress and he's talking to him, he has this back and forth. And eventually he's like, join me, Uriel Ventress. Together, we could rule the galaxy. And Uriel Ventress looks at him and he's like, I'll never join you, for I am a space marine and I fight for the Emperor. And Hanzu's like, damn you, Uriel Ventress. Feed them to the Daemonculaba. You will regret not taking my offer. All of the characters in this book are perfect. Hanzu is perfect. I couldn't have asked for a better cast. And honestly, a lot of my enjoyment may have come from the particular narrator that they got to do the audible version. Because when I do, like, when I read a book that I'm planning on making into content, I'll start with the audio version. I'll pay for like a PDF copy as well. And I'll listen to the audio version first, and then I'll go back to the PDF for note-taking and stuff like that. Being able to control search for certain parts of a book is immensely helpful when trying to make a lore video on it. And I don't know if it was the narrator's intention to play up the campiness, but he definitely did, and it made my experience with the book so much better than it could have been. There's even a part with Hanzu in the beginning of the book where, if you hadn't read Storm of Iron, him and the Iron Warriors took a whole bunch of gene seed from Hydra Cordatus, and now this is picking up like right after that, where he's got the gene seed, he's in his fortress, and these two other Iron Warrior Chaos Lords, they come a-knocking on Hanzu's door, because Hanzu's predecessor would have shared the spoils of war with them, so they're coming hoping that he's gonna give them some of that gene seed. And Hanzu basically tells them, like, you know, I fought and bled for this gene seed. You ain't getting shit. And one of the Chaos Lords, who's a dreadnought, is like, insolence! And he lifts a Thunderhammer and just pulverizes a Chaos Space Marine standing next to Hanzu. He obliterates him in an instant. Why the dreadnought didn't hit Hanzu with the hammer? He hit fucking Chaos Space Marine Steve? I don't know what Steve did, but he just explodes into blood. It's on everybody's face, and Hanzu's like, gross. Now, I want to talk about the horror elements in this book because, boy howdy, are there a lot of them. There's people getting stitched together, mountains of corpses, all kinds of blood and gore, the whole shebang. But these elements are treated more like set dressing because Medringar, the Iron Warriors' demon world that they're on, is basically an allegory for, it's not even an allegory for hell. Like, for all intents and purposes, it is hell. These two Space Marines are on a journey through hell. And with all of the victims of the Iron Warriors in the stories, like the things that have been turned into the Daemonculaba, the people that are in the skinning pits and all that, like, they're not treated as people by the book. And I know that sounds awful, but let me explain. They're more background dressing for the setting. None of the victims in this book, none of the people that are getting turned into horrible, horrible things or being experimented on, none of them are named. They're not given any distinguishing features that mark them as like independent from the other teeming masses. None of them even have a single speaking line throughout the entire book. So it's like playing, if you remember that game Dante's Inferno, it's kind of like playing through Dante's Inferno, where if you take a stop, to look at like all the scenery around you, of like all the pillars that are made out of writhing bodies that are stitched together. Like, if you really stop to like make the story focus on that, like look at random people in there and go into their backstories and how they ended up in this position, it's pretty gruesome and dark stuff. But as just like this background setting all around you, you don't really focus on that, and you're never really left disturbed or unsettled. It's just part of the environment that the character happens to be in. It's like trying to tell you like just how horrible everything is without dwelling on it, because it doesn't want to leave you upset. It wants to just kind of have fun in the bombasticness of the setting itself. At least that's the way I interpreted it. If this story had been told from the perspective of one of the slaves taken by the Iron Warriors, like it started off with fucking Frank, and he's been taken by the Iron Warriors, and we have to see him go through everything, all the horrible things, to his ultimate fate, like that's a pretty disturbing book. Like, there's this one short story, and I forget what it's called, I'll throw it on the screen here. It's from the perspective of somebody who was taken as a slave by the Dark Eldar. If you know anything about the Dark Eldar, that's not a good experience. So the whole story is just her dealing with the PTSD of, you know, having been a slave within Komorra. And that story is really messed up. Like, it really forces you to think about what these people are actually going through. And even though it's not as bloody gory as, you know, something like Dead Sky Black Sun, something like that, or the King of Pigs, which I just recently made a Grimdark story hour on, those stories are the ones that kind of upset me. They're the ones that leave me feeling really unsettled, to where I'm thinking about them days after I read them or listened to them. Whereas something like this, This is just campy schlock. Me and my partner are playing through Baldur's Gate 3 right now. Absolutely love that game. I was fully intending on playing as the Dark Urge on my second playthrough. If you don't know anything about Baldur's Gate 3, the Dark Urge is the de facto evil character you can play as. You could basically be like a mass murderer. I watched a compilation video of the horrible, horrible things that the game forces you to do as the Dark Urge. And I made it about 2 minutes into that video where I had to shut it off. I couldn't do it. I was watching the Dark Urge kill all of the characters that I've grown really, really attached to over the course of our playthrough, and I was very upset. And I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can play as the Dark Urge. I'm not going to be able to do that. It's not me. So that being said, would I enjoy a sequel to Deader Sky, Blacker Sun? Absolutely. I would be all over that. The thing about the Daemonculaba in this book is it actually makes up an incredibly tiny portion of it. It's only one part in chapter 13. It's honestly like a handful of pages. You could just skip over that part entirely and you really wouldn't be missing out on a lot. But it's so funny to me that the Daemonculaba has taken on like this life of its own within the 40k community. It's like spoken about in a hushed whispers, like, do you know about the Daemonculaba? Oh yeah, I know about the Daemonculaba. It's real bad. It's kind of one of those things where people will send the wiki link to their friends that are just getting into Warhammer and just kind of sit there waiting for their response. And then their friend is like, Jesus fucking Christ, what am I getting into? What the hell is all wrong with this franchise? And their buddy's just like, yep, that's how it is. Welcome to the Grimdark, friendo. And you know, honestly, thinking about it in that context, I think the Daemonculaba actually works better as a Wikipedia entry or something that is covered in a lore video than it does as, you know, as what it actually is, just a MacGuffin in this one book. Because when you're just reading the Wikipedia page on it, it's very clinical. It just tells you what it is, how it's made, what its purpose was. And when you're looking at those words strung together in those sentences, it's pretty horrifically disturbing. And you know, not trying to play it down, it really is. But because you don't have the context of the book itself surrounding it, because you're not reading through B-movie schlock, your mind is able to fill in all of the blanks surrounding it, and your imagination just kind of goes wild with it, and it creates this like stuff straight out of your worst nightmares. I would dare say the Wikipedia link on the Daemonculaba is the best creepypasta in the entirety of the Warhammer 40k community. Honestly, probably on the internet, period. I feel like this thing has been shared with people who are not part of the 40k community, and it definitely probably paints a bad picture of us, but I promise you we're great. If you're one of those people watching this video for some reason. So at the end of the day, would I recommend you read Dead Sky Black Sun? Absolutely yes. If you're the type of person who enjoys, you know, super over-the-top, bloody, gory, schlocky B-movie type fun. If you're not, if that's not your bag, you probably won't enjoy this book. If you think you might be that type of person, but the stuff with the Daemonculaba specifically is just a little bit too much for you, just skip over chapter 13. You're not really missing much. Honestly, you can read through chapter 13 right until the point where they're getting dragged below the Colin Goal, the fortress that Hanzu has. Like, you'll know when, and right when everything starts to change, just skip to the end of the chapter, you'll be fine. Hell, I'll spoil it for you. All the Ultramarines and the Renegades and all that, they get captured, they get taken down there, they see some horrific shit is done to them. Uriel Ventress gets put inside one of the Daemonculabas. He says, no, wait, I'm a Space Marine, punches his way back out. There's a fight, and then they escape down this sewer system that's like a rapids made out of like blood and guts and viscera and all the nastiness, like surgical byproducts from the savage morticians. They come out of the pipe, they're surrounded by the unfleshed, and the unfleshed are like, ugh, friend? Friend or foe? And Uriel Ventress is like, friend. And they're like, we take you back to tribe now. That's it. That's all you need to know about that. You can skip that part of the book and just enjoy the rest of Dead Sky Black Sun. I promise you it's a good time. So anyways, that's really all I had to say on the Daemonculaba. I'm sure a lot of you are disappointed that I'm known for making longer videos, and the part on the Daemonculaba itself is less than 10 minutes long, I think. But there really isn't a lot to tell. I mean, it really is just contained to this one part of one chapter. I mean, I could tell you the entire story of Dead Sky Black Sun, which I do plan on doing. I want to make this into one of my Grimdark Story Hour videos. So if you want something like that, that's gonna come out in a couple weeks. If you like this type of content, maybe consider subscribing, maybe hit the like button. You've heard it a billion different times from other YouTubers, but it does genuinely help out. And yep, that's all I had to say on this, so I will catch you all in the next one.